sister's greed led to break-in at my house. Now facing charges, what would you do if your own family betrayed you, breaking every rule just for greed? My two sisters and their husbands did the unthinkable, breaking into my vacation home, igniting a cascade of conflicts. What were they after, and what will happen next? Before continuing the story, tell me which city you're watching from. I want to know how far this video has come. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so I can send you exciting stories like this every day. This happened today. My parents decided to host a barbecue because that's what older people do, I guess. I didn't want to go because I really don't like my sisters, their husbands, or their kids. My wife and I don't have kids. Mom pressured my wife, and long story short, we went. When we got there, about 20 people were already there. My sisters and their husbands were quite drunk. My mom was busy trying to control the nieces and nephews, who are aged 7 and 11. My dad was relaxing in the whirlpool part of the pool with a small cooler full of beers. My wife and I made small talk with various people, ate food, and had a frozen margarita. My sisters and their husbands criticized us for being late, not being in swimsuits, and ruining the vibe. It was a typical suburban summer get-together. After about 45 minutes, two children came up to a neighboring guest who was relaxing by the pool and shoved her in. She only got halfway soaked since she stumbled in without falling. Despite being obviously displeased, she didn't raise a fuss. She simply approached the parents, took their towels, patted herself dry, and walked away. My sisters and their spouses found the whole thing enjoyable. I was talking a few steps from the water a few while later. From the corner of my eye, I noticed 3 children sprinting towards me. I was, of course, their next target. I was able to outsmart the little children, so I quickly moved to avoid them. They all 3 sprinted headlong into the swimming pool. The majority of the attendees, including my spouse and I, burst out laughing, but their inebriated mothers became really alarmed. Despite being dressed in swimwear, it seemed that 2 of the children were incapable of swimming. I took a back seat and allowed others to fish the kids out because I was not wearing swimwear. The children cried as if they had lost a leg. It was at that moment when chaos ensued. The 4 inebriated parents were screaming at me specifically and at everyone else for almost letting their children die. Not to mention the fact that 2 of the children had been using their parents' iPhones to record the stunt, which were now submerged in the pool. In an attempt to recover the phones, one of my brothers-in-law entered the pool, but his back and BMI prevented that. Not surprisingly, since my sisters were still bitching at everyone, no one else offered to help. I informed my sisters that it was their duty to watch over their children and that they would be in charge if something had happened to them rather than me. Both sides used some really heated language. After the second brother-in-law fell and face-planted and yelled at us, my wife and I departed. They now claim that my being the asshole was because I allowed the little pricks to throw me into the pool, enjoy themselves, and break my phone. As an aside, Dad naturally never managed to escape the maelstrom. Oops, pertinent remarks. I understand that they're just kids having fun, but their behavior reflects more on their parents than on them. I regret going to the gathering. Although it's nice to see my parents and their neighbors, I really dislike my sisters and their husbands. They openly show their envy towards us, and being around them is exhausting. More about why I don't care for some of my family. My relationship with my sisters has always been strained, like oil and water. They are 8 and 10 years older than me, and I've never been close to them. I also don't have much in common with their husbands. While they are decent guys, our interests don't align. Both my sisters are stay-at-home moms, and their husbands earn good money, with one making significantly more than I do. In contrast, my wife and I have professional careers and no children, which allows us to be more financially responsible. This results in us having more investments in the freedom to take nice trips once or twice a year. This disparity seems to bother my sisters and their husbands, leading to ongoing petty behavior from them. My wife and I generally don't enjoy their company, which is why I wanted to avoid the get-together. However, my wife is a positive person and usually happy to see them. Hopefully, next time she won't feel pressured into attending. My wife is much more tolerant and forgiving towards my siblings than I am, but based on her comments on the way home, I think she's also reached her limit with them. Your dad sounds awesome. Yes, my dad is very laid back. He enjoys being around people, having worked in sales, and he likes to see everyone having a good time. He's really enjoying his retirement. He and two friends just sat and watched the chaos unfold. My mom is great too, but the situation upset her. The kids were fine. By the time I left, they were inside watching TV. They are 7, 9, 10, 10, and 11 years old. The middle three were the ones who tried to push me into the pool. I suspect the 11-year-old, who is usually the ringleader, encouraged them. You said it in a strange way when you said your folks were having a barbecue. In order to meet the character limit, I had to edit the post. My parents enjoy entertaining guests and are social creatures. They always think of an excuse to come together and have the quintessential house that makes for wonderful entertainment. They had intended for everyone to spend the 4th of July at their property, but since one of my sisters and her family were away on vacation, this was a spoof celebration instead, complete with flags, grill, margarita machine, and red, white, and blue decor. The children were promised sparklers. The only other children there were my nieces and nephews. Like my parents, all of the neighbors are elderly. Voters choose OP over the asshole. On August 17, 2023, an update was posted about a month later. To start with, my parents told me that all my nieces and nephews are great swimmers, and they often use the pool. The youngest one, who's 7, is still learning, but he loves being in the water. My sister claimed they couldn't swim just to save face. In fairness, none of the kids are allowed in the deep end, which is where they fell. The two 10-year-olds and the 9-year-old were the ones who tried to push me into the pool. After we left, the party didn't end well. My intoxicated brother-in-law fell on his face while shouting at me, and he had to get stitches at an urgent care clinic. He was too drunk to drive, so my dad took him. My dad was really upset about it. Husbands also chimed in with a few comments. My wife and I decided to block all 4 of them. My mom called me because she was very upset about what they said. She and my dad were also in the chat, and I don't blame her for being upset. Because of these messages, my parents made my sisters and their husbands come over the next day without their kids to clear things up and set some rules, as my mom put it. The outcome was a somewhat reluctant apology from my siblings, relayed through my mom's phone. I'm glad my wife was there when they called. Her stern look stopped me from saying what I wanted to. I just thanked them and said we didn't feel the need to talk about it anymore. Since I believed the matter to be resolved, I unblocked them. One of the brothers-in-law texted me that evening to let me know how much the phones cost and to inquire when I would be making the payment. WTF? Never was my response. I took a screen grab of his message and sent it to my parents along with a note stating that we were finished with this absurdity. We are cutting all ties with the sisters' spouses, including invitations to future holidays and get-togethers where they might be invited. I then blocked the sisters and their husbands once more. At that moment, things really went south. Dad phoned them and gave them a piece of his mind. Among other things, he told them that the grandchildren were not allowed at his house for an unspecified period. This was a big deal as my mom often babysits for free, so it shook them up. He also forbade them from using the vacation house and revealed that my wife and I were the actual owners, not him and Mom. This news shocked them. Both of my sister's families frequently used the place, even inviting their friends for weekend trips. This behavior was very unusual for my parents. They'd clearly had enough. Just for clarity, I never wanted my sisters to know we owned the place. We bought it for my parents as they'd always dreamed of having a mountain home. Keeping the ownership a secret was just a way to prevent drama with my siblings. A few days later, my sisters and their husbands showed up at our house unexpectedly to apologize in person. We were out for dinner, and they left a note. One sister also tried to call me at work. I let it go to voicemail. We've decided that cutting contact is the best move for the foreseeable future and haven't interacted with them for over 3 weeks now. As far as I'm concerned, I'm done. They can take a hike. Relevant comments. About our life now. It's been less than a month, but I must admit that blocking them has made our lives significantly more peaceful. I hadn't noticed how much constant, minor drama they cause. They're not toxic or bad people, just exhausting and petty. Personally, I don't mind them using the vacation home. Technically, it's ours, but we bought it from my parents. They manage it and decide who uses it when they're not there. We cover all the operating costs and taxes. A positive outcome from this conflict is that we now have a plan for the property when my parents get older. I was ready to take over managing it, scheduling weekends, maintaining it, and so on. But now we know we'll just sell it, and if we want to go to the mountains, we'll rent an Airbnb. About my parents. Yes, my parents aren't naive. They're pretty relaxed, though. They believe in letting others live their lives. I think they'll soften their stance soon, but that's their call. We still won't be going to any family events for a while. What's tough for my sisters is that they're likely very worried that I'll stop them from using the cabin. I won't. That's up to mom and dad until they get older. And it squashes one of the sisters' dream of building a cluster of homes when we inherit the property, which I've known about for a while and have just ignored. Normally, the lots up there only have one area that can be built on, but this piece of land is much larger because it's at the end of a road. At least 3 houses with great views could be built on that land. They're not truly remorseful. They just want something from you. I completely agree. Their apologies don't seem genuine, and I don't plan on associating with them in the near future. As for them using the vacation home, that's really up to my parents. Yes, I technically own it and handle all the expenses, but I purchased it for them and gave them the authority to manage it on a daily basis. They're kind individuals who always dreamed of a retreat for the family, but they could never have afforded it on their own. I was able to buy it for them because I've been lucky financially. I save and invest aggressively, and I received a huge bonus the same year I sold my house and moved in with my now wife. I don't mind if my parents allow my siblings to use the house, but I must confess I'm finding some amusement in my sister's unease over the fact that I could afford to buy the place, let my parents use it, and not mention it to them. Dad changed the lot code last week, so now only he, Mom, my wife, and I know it. Regarding Mom babysitting the kids, she told me that she and occasionally Dad have been visiting each sister's house once a week to spend the day with the kids. When school begins, she plans to pick up each group of kids from school once a week on different days and spend the evening with them. She says managing all 5 kids at once is stressful, but one group at a time is manageable. Both Mom and Dad have told me they don't intend to invite my sisters and their families to their house in the near future, and they're enjoying the peace. I suspect they were already fed up with the old dynamics and used the pool party incident as an opportunity to change some aspects of their relationships. Fun fact about the reason the message was taken down from the AITA subreddit, I just read a post from the other sub's administrators saying that there was property damage caused by the violence. It still eludes me. I suppose it's the phones getting destroyed. Farcical, updated on August 26, 2023, 9 days after the last post. Well, these past few days have been intriguing. Though that was more of a fart than what's happened this week, I believe the shit had already struck the fan. I need to give you some financial background so that this makes sense. My parents have always struggled with saving money. I've been handling their taxes for years, so I'm well aware of their financial situation. Their house is paid off and they have little debt, but they didn't set aside much for retirement. They both receive Social Security. Dad has a decent pension and they have some savings, but there's no hidden wealth. I bought them their current car as a retirement gift so they could have a nice vehicle to drive. It was the first car they owned in probably 20 years, as they usually leased. My sisters believe that our parents are wealthy and that they will inherit everything since I don't need more money. Hence, they've never bothered to save either. It turns out my elder sister and her husband, who have 3 children, have been living beyond their means for a while and are facing financial difficulties. They've maxed out their credit cards and are so behind on their car leases that one is about to be repossessed. He used to boast about earning a high income, but it turns out to be about half of what he claimed. She revealed all this to Mom on Tuesday because they need a loan. And in a shocking revelation for Mom and Dad, she admitted that for the past 3 years, she's been renting out the vacation house about once a month and keeping the money. We're talking over $2,000 for a weekend and at least $4,000 for a week. Since she's now barred from using the place, she's had to cancel one group already. She's now afraid they'll lose everything. My parents aren't in a position to lend them any money. My other sister knew about the vacation home being rented out, but naturally she never mentioned it. I think she's done the same thing because once when I went there to drop off a repaired ATV, I found a family who claimed they were staying there with my sister and her family who had supposedly gone to town for something. At the time, I didn't make a fuss. I assumed she'd lent the house to some friends, but it's always made me wonder. I learned all this from my parents, who are quite stressed about it, especially Mom. Dad is mostly just angry about the whole situation. I know Dad feels let down, and I guess he's embarrassed that he can't help his daughter out financially. He did emphasize that as long as he has a say, the girls won't be using the vacation home anytime soon. My parents updated me because they thought my sisters would try to persuade me next, and they were correct. On Thursday, my sisters showed up at our doorstep once more, this time sans husbands, and lingered outside until I returned home. I was left with the options of engaging in a public spat with them, risking a spectacle if I entered without them, or inviting them in. I chose the latter. The elder sister spun a tale, with the younger one nodding in agreement, about why it was crucial for them to regain access to the mountain house instantly. They also accused me of being a lousy brother and insisted I should shoulder the responsibility of their kids' college education, because that's what family does, according to them. I let them present their narrative, then I confronted them, armed with the information my parents had shared. Things spiraled out of control then. Denials, tears, expletives, shouting. It had it all. Even 2 days later, I can still feel a phantom ringing in my ears. I won't sugarcoat it. I hurled some pretty harsh and unsavory words at them, but nothing I said was untrue. After about an hour of this, they finally departed. After their departure, I took a shower and lay down. When I woke up, my wife was back home, and her opening remark was about how she had to block even more numbers because my sisters had started bombarding our phones from new ones. My parents sent me a message yesterday asking me to give them a call. I'm certain my sisters have relayed their version of events to them, but I don't have the energy to revisit the whole saga just yet. I'm typically quite lively, but this drama has left me feeling drained. I mustered just enough energy today to drive up to the vacation house and secure the entrance gate with a padlock. I'm the sole key holder. I suspect this will be sufficient to deter my siblings from trespassing. They'd likely collapse attempting the 400-yard uphill trek to reach the house. Updates after the old video. Post update 3, September 12, 2023, 2.5 weeks after the previous update. Here's another update on the ongoing saga that is my extended family. Given the recent turn of events, it felt apt to share. After my sister's visit, my parents decided they were done managing the vacation home. It seemed the sisters had been nagging them incessantly to regain access to the place. Essentially, my folks passed the baton of responsibility to me, stating that the vacation home was my issue to deal with henceforth. Until now, they'd been the ones scheduling its use and maintaining it, replacing any items that wore out and so forth. However, they decided they'd had enough of being caught in the crossfire. While I understand their stance, it's disheartening because the place was meant to be a haven for them to relax and spend time in, which they did frequently. Moreover, I never objected to my sisters and their families using it because, frankly, I felt that was my parents' decision to make, despite me being the legal owner. But now my parents will need my involvement to access the place, which alters the entire dynamic. I've implemented several measures to secure the property. As previously mentioned, I locked the gate with a heavy-duty chain and the sturdiest lock I could find. I also reset all the door keypads and generated new codes. As of yesterday, security cameras have been installed, which is quite exciting, especially since the installer persuaded me to fit a high-resolution one overlooking the valley. Although the system set me back more than I anticipated, the sense of security it brings is invaluable. The installer also posted signs around the property indicating it's under video surveillance. Additionally, I installed a robust lockout for the water shutoff drain valve. I sincerely hope I don't misplace the keys, as removing it will be a massive pain. Other than my wife, no one knows about the water being locked off, and only we possess the keys. Last week, I received individual calls at my office from both brothers-in-law, each attempting to persuade me to allow them to continue using the house as they had been. The elder one had taken some friends up for a guy's getaway, but found himself locked out due to the gate lock. He was understandably upset and embarrassed. I suspect he would have broken the lock if he'd been able to. Throughout his call, he oscillated between being assertive and playing the victim. At one point, he even threatened to tear the gate from its foundations. He confessed that they'd been leasing the house to a few acquaintances, claiming they needed the income, accusing me of sabotaging their venture, and demanding I reimburse their guests. Bizarre. I wish I had recorded our conversation, but I'm not familiar with how to do that on an office phone. The other brother-in-law, on the other hand, seemed to be calling on my sister's behest and didn't put up much resistance when I informed him he should not anticipate using the property again. Regardless, I reiterated to them that they're no longer permitted to use the house and asked them not to inquire again. At this juncture, I'm contemplating selling the vacation home. My wife and I won't utilize it enough to warrant keeping it, and it's unlikely we'll be hosting any family gatherings there in the foreseeable future. I broached the idea of selling it to my parents, and their reaction was essentially, whatever. I'd make a substantial profit from the sale. The property comprises 3 lots with breathtaking views and is situated at the end of a private road, but I'll likely hold off on selling for now. Making such a decision now would be emotionally driven. Currently, my sisters and I aren't on speaking terms, and I have no intention of reaching out. I'm unsure of their relationship with my parents, and I prefer not to know. On a brighter note, we enjoyed an evening out with my parents last week at a new restaurant, which was quite pleasant. Thankfully, no one broached the subject of this ongoing drama. Mom did share updates about the nieces and nephews. She's been visiting them at their homes. I apologize if this update lacks the humor or triumphs of previous ones. That's just how life is sometimes. Update post 4, 1 month later, on October 16, 2023. A few individuals have requested an update. You may now proceed. I employed a worker to oversee and maintain the vacation house. He looks after his parents, maintains a large number of properties, and resides in the region. While some are weekend homes similar to ours, others are holiday rentals. Every week or two, he physically checks on the premises and has access to my video feeds. He could have the best job in the mountains, in my opinion. He is paid to take his dog for drives, explore the houses on foot, and spend time on people's decks whenever he pleases. Additionally, he has a feed from a camera located close to the beginning of the private road, which records still images each time a car passes by. In addition, he will perform routine upkeep and repairs for an hourly fee of $450 each month. Plus, he's buddies with every deputy under the sheriff. He sends pictures from his walks to everyone once or twice a week and says that doing this has given him a lot of peace of mind. I must admit that I adore my folks. They told me all of this tonight during dinner. My sisters were putting pressure on them to insist that I host Thanksgiving at the vacation home for everyone. For the family, Thanksgiving had become quite the custom up there. My wife and I only get to go once every 6 years. My dad knew I would say no, so he decided not to worry me about it. They devised a brilliant plan, in my opinion. They said they would host the Thanksgiving get-together and would rent an Airbnb in the mountains if everyone divided the money in advance. If not, one of the sisters may celebrate Thanksgiving at their house, or they would have it there. The middle sister was all for doing the Airbnb, but the eldest sister doesn't have any money. Thus, this led to a fight between the sisters. The time to commit to Airbnb is no longer available. Thanksgiving will undoubtedly be spent at my folks' house. We are not going to be present. For the time being, my parents have requested that we not sell the property. They agreed that although they would like to use it from time to time, they wouldn't until my sisters had adjusted to the new normal. Naturally, they would prefer it if everyone could reunite there in the future, but it is simply not going to occur. At this point, I'd much rather sell it and move on, but if my parents do occasionally use it, I can live with it. Furthermore, its value will increase in the future. My spouse and I haven't kept in touch with my sisters' husbands. For the benefit of our parents, both sisters have called from new numbers, damn you, Google Voice, and left messages requesting that I meet with them to figure out how we may all use the family vacation house. They also gave my wife a call. I'm relieved that I already have the practice of not picking up the phone when I don't recognize a number. Sincerely, I have no idea if they are insane or if they believe they can intimidate me into granting them access once more. Really, I don't care. My parents have informed me that the eldest sister and her spouse are selling their jet skis and other unnecessary items, as well as getting out of the leases on their big-ass truck and SUV. That will be really difficult for her. She will not appreciate being seen in something smaller, older, or less expensive because she is a real show-off. The identity of my brother-in-law is closely linked to his truck as well. His minor tattoo of the truck company's insignia is another reason he and I never got together, to be honest. It has been proposed by several that I turn the holiday house into an Airbnb. I have no intention of doing so anytime soon. Although I am aware that it would be profitable, my parents would be stressed out and there would be a great deal of tension in the family. They don't require it. Also, taking out the personal items my parents have there would be a pain. There would be deterioration on the property and nowhere to put such stuff. Even though I would utilize a manager to handle it, I'm sure it would take some time on my end. I don't think it's worth it. November 27, 2020, an update post 1.5 months later. Most of this was written yesterday, but I wanted to wait to publish it till I wasn't so stressed. Waiting was ineffective. I'm still tense. I apologize for the ramblings. It's difficult to write clearly after all that has happened. Everything has gotten really bad. I sincerely did not anticipate that anything similar would occur. Condensed version. After breaking into my vacation house, my brothers-in-law were taken into custody. They are accused with Class 1 misdemeanors, including breaking and entering, damaging property, and making threats. I won't back down from the accusations. If I get compensated in full for the harm they caused, I could follow through. As of Saturday night, they remained in custody. By now, I assume they're out. I thought that everything had calmed down. My sisters haven't been in contact with me or seen me in over 6 weeks. My parents enjoyed their week-long visit to the residence. My recruitment of a property manager, Mike, has gone really well. He completed a few of the repairs I asked him to, and I've given him a list of things he has to finish. I was kind of wishing I could go up there because he normally sends his clients a picture or two of wildlife or a sunset each week. My brothers-in-law visited my holiday house on the Friday following Thanksgiving. The driveway gate was harmed when they used an angle grinder to break through the chain. They damaged the lock set and severely gouged the door in their attempt to enter through the front door. Eventually, they were able to enter through a locked interior door and the utility floor door. I have no idea why, but they also broke into the barn. Mike and the sheriff's deputies met them as they exited via the front entrance. When there's movement, Mike receives notifications from the camera system. When he realized what was happening, he dialed the sheriff's office. According to Mike, the brothers-in-law tried to talk their way out of it, but the deputies didn't believe them. Breaking into an empty house is taken very seriously there. Usually it's meth addicts who ransack the place and sell everything. When the brothers-in-law were arrested, they freaked out and threatened to beat me up, which was not smart to say in front of the cops. Mike and the sheriff's office tried calling my wife and me to see what we wanted to do, but we were spending the day with her parents and had left our phones in the car to enjoy our time. So they booked the brothers-in-law on all charges, which is what I would have wanted them to do anyway. The brothers-in-law called their wives from jail, who of course freaked out. They called my parents, tried to call me, but I had blocked them, and tried to find a lawyer to arrange bail, which was not easy because it's a rural area and it was a holiday weekend. The older sister has no money and her credit cards are maxed out, so if they made bail, my middle sister would have had to pay for both husbands. I know they were still in jail as of Saturday afternoon. On our way home from seeing my in-laws on Friday night, we checked our phones. My parents, Mike, and the sheriff's office left me a ton of texts and calls. It spoiled my wonderful day. I was feeling really happy until I glanced at my phone. After going over the texts and hearing the messages, my wife read them aloud to me. I knew a little something about what was going on by the time we arrived home. I made an effort to relax but was unable. My anger increased when I called Mike and learned more about the incident and the extent of the damage. At the end of Friday, I called the sheriff's office to make sure my intention to file charges was clear and that the brothers-in-law had no right to be on my property. I hardly slept and never gave my folks a call back. I didn't give them a call until Saturday afternoon. I think my mom was the most shaken of them all. My sisters had put pressure on them to persuade me to withdraw the accusations and tell the police it was all an error. I vehemently objected, stating that I wouldn't proceed until I had spoken with a lawyer and received full payment for all repairs. By the time we hung up, my mom was crying uncontrollably, which made me feel awful. In addition to saying he believed they should make amends for the harm, my dad proposed that it was time for a total makeover. There's nothing I can do about it, so I haven't gone up to the property yet. When I see the damage in person, I'm sure I'll get even more unhappy. The pictures are already awful. Although my employer doesn't allow me to take time off for non-emergencies, I was planning to travel tomorrow or Wednesday. I've sent letters to 2 of my friends who are attorneys, requesting their recommendations for the best attorneys to pursue my sisters and brothers-in-law. I'm attempting to obtain restraining orders, but I'm not sure precisely what I can do. It might help that I have all of their text. For the money they made renting the space, I'm thinking of suing them. The money is irrelevant to me, but it will help ensure their maximum misery. Definitely taking off the gloves now. 2 other points of interest. 1, the brothers-in-law were unaware that I had installed cameras and that I had hired someone to monitor the area. My sisters would only use that as an excuse to act out, so my parents knew but hadn't told them. On the property, there are signs indicating that it is under camera surveillance. However, there are no trespassing signs. 2, at this time, my wife has had enough. She's been quite patient with me, so I don't blame her, but she reached her breaking point and didn't hold back in telling me. She said that although it is up to me how I handle this, she believed that everyone needed to be given a difficult lesson. 3, the middle brother-in-law has a security clearance, so he might suffer consequences at work, but the older brother-in-law probably won't. I'm expecting that the middle brother-in-law will be inspired to instantly cover the damages himself. 4, the caregiver Mike has a fascinating history because the deputies were all locals. I assumed he was buddies with some of them, but I was mistaken. He was shot while on duty as a police officer in a large city many years ago. He then made the decision to resign and relocate to his parents' retirement home. The encounter has left him with some PTSD. Typically, he is accompanied by his dog, which is a licensed service animal. I suppose he became buddies with the deputies because law enforcement personnel have a tendency to stick together. 5, for the rest of my life, I refuse to see or interact with these assholes. I am aware that this goes against my strong desire to ruin their life as much as possible. Relative comment, I've heard a lot of folks say that I ought to have been tough on all of this right away. I haven't done it since I detest drama of this kind, and it would have upset my parents. But screw it. They're anxious now. My wife says it's in my lap, has essentially decided she doesn't want to talk about it anymore, and has put it on hold for the time being. She'll put up with my venting, but I'm assuming she won't be involved moving forward. Edit about the reason they broke in. I'm speculating, but I believe they intended to use it for family vacations before reselling it. The property manager, Mike, claims that deer season lasts until the end of the year. It has previously served as the brothers-in-law's base camp for extended hunting weekends, as far as I'm aware. It can accommodate a large number of people, so a single event with friends may bring in thousands of dollars. That might also explain why they broke into the barn, but again, I'm just assuming they'd like to use the 6-seater mule I acquired a few years ago. They both really like my dad, therefore I don't think they intended to ruin the place. It means too much to them. 5 days after the December 2nd, 2023 update post 6. Though a lot has transpired in the last 2 days, I didn't anticipate writing another post this quickly. In summary, I believe that this garbage has finally come to an end. An envelope arrived at my office on Thursday afternoon from a courier. There was a $5,000 cashier's check and a signed letter from both of my brothers-in-law inside. There was a heartfelt apology in the letter. They said the $5,000 was to cover the damage, recognized that they broke in, and said it was wrong. They also agreed not to visit the vacation house unless my wife and I asked them, and to pay extra if needed. They also said they might lose their employment, so they requested me to assist in getting the charges dropped as quickly as possible. They consented to any further necessary actions, such as a restraining order. The remainder of the letter was likewise amicable. To put it mildly, I was taken aback. Their former behavior has completely changed from what it was doing now. I had already made an appointment with a lawyer to talk about obtaining a restraining order and filing a lawsuit against my brothers-in-law for the damages. After I informed the lawyer about what I had received, he agreed to see me that day rather than the following week. I should wait to deposit the check, he said. We had a 2-hour meeting. With regard to the 4 of them, the sisters and brothers-in-law, he suggested that my wife and I reach a settlement and draft a mutual release agreement. He said that even though we would probably win if we filed a lawsuit, it may take more than 2 years, cost a lot of money in legal expenses, and we might never get paid. In addition, he said that even if we decided not to drop the charges, we may still keep the $5,000. The deal, which he is currently drafting, ought to be completed by Monday. There will be provisions in the agreement that resemble restraining orders. I had previously requested that my property management prepare a quote for repairing the damage. After the meeting, I gave him a call and requested that he provide me with an estimate as soon as possible. I understood that on Friday. He estimates the total cost of fixing everything to be about $4,000. That is primarily for the entrance door. My lawyer called each of the brothers-in-law on Friday, explained our proposal, and suggested they hire separate attorneys. They both gave their okay. They could afford to pay for a lawyer or the damages, but not both, the middle brother-in-law informed him. Since they had no true justification for what they had done, they reasoned that hiring a lawyer wouldn't change anything. His main worry was whether or not the charges will be dismissed. I get the impression that they will do anything to put this behind them. On Friday, my lawyer also gave the DA's office a call to talk about dropping the charges, obtained the prosecutor's name, and left them a message, but they haven't heard from them yet. Since the brothers-in-law are making their payments and have no past convictions, he believes the charges will be dropped. Nevertheless, he isn't a criminal defense attorney. He said that if I wanted everything dismissed, I should be ready to travel there on Monday or Tuesday and speak with the prosecutor face-to-face. He also told me that I should avoid communicating with my sisters and brothers-in-law going forward, particularly for the next 6 months, and that it will be crucial to abide by the provisions of the agreement in our future dealings with them. The brothers-in-law's change of heart is probably the result of their realizing what's at stake for them, the potential costs in terms of fines and legal bills and other consequences. Aside from the extremely improbable chance that they could spend up to 1 days in jail, one of them may perhaps lose his security clearance for his employment. This then is their Hail Mary ticket to carry on with their regular lives. Although this isn't a perfect answer, at least it will help me get past the financial and legal aspects of the mess I've been in for the past few months. It's okay that I doubt I'll ever be able to get along with any of them civilly again. Right now, all I want is to put an end to this, move on with my life, and never talk to any of them again. I'm worn out from this. Basically, my wife feels the same way. It's somewhat of a side note, but receiving the formal apologies felt like a big deal to me. That never occurred to me, but clearly it matters to me a lot. Right now, the money doesn't seem all that essential. Still, I'll take it with gusto. In addition, I'm very sure the money was provided by my middle sister's spouse. The employer he works for's credit union provided the cashier's check. I'll probably just make a small modification to this post after everything is signed. I apologize for my pedagogy. My mind seems clearer now that I've written these pieces, and the response has been quite helpful. I genuinely value all of the feedback, understanding, and encouragement you have given me, and I sincerely hope that none of you ever have to deal with this kind of garbage. Relevant comment. I must admit that I cried with relief on Thursday night when I finally arrived home, thinking that this would finally be the end of it. Until everyone signs this deal, I won't talk about it with my parents. I'm not, but my sisters and brothers-in-law can, if they so choose. Between me and them, it is. Final update, 5 days later on December 7th, 2023. On Tuesday morning, I revised an agreement with my lawyer and sent it to my siblings and their spouses. This agreement required them to cover my lawyer's fee of $3,000. They weren't pleased and tried to negotiate it down, but my lawyer insisted they either accept the terms or face a lawsuit. This lawsuit would demand compensation for various issues, including rental income, property damage, emotional distress, lost income, and legal fees. My lawyer also warned them that I would push for legal charges. In the end, they signed the agreement. I was told the atmosphere was tense, with the middle brother-in-law taking control and even telling my sisters to be quiet, or he'd make his own deal. They gave another check for $2,500, saying it was all they had. We decided to accept this as the final payment. My lawyer mentioned that everyone was quite unfriendly, but they managed to stay calm enough to sign the agreement and leave without causing a scene. Yesterday, I visited the vacation house to assess the damage and speak with the district attorney's office. The extent of the damage made me very angry. I was so upset that I considered paying for the repairs myself and doing everything in my power to make their lives difficult. I tried to calm down by taking a walk, but it didn't work. I ended up calling a close friend who listened to me vent for over an hour. He reminded me to focus on moving past this incident and getting on with my life. I'm still unsure if I want to do that, but I managed to calm down enough to eat something, which made me feel better. After lunch, I went to the district attorney's office. I didn't have an appointment and had to wait, but I eventually met with the assistant district attorney handling the case. The gist of our conversation was that since I don't want to press charges and the brothers-in-law have compensated for the damages, they are willing to drop all charges except trespassing. This will be classified as a Class 2 misdemeanor. The brothers-in-law will have to plead guilty and pay whatever fine the judge decides. I was also informed that if they contest the trespassing charge or break any rules, they will face serious consequences. It helped that the brothers-in-law didn't resist arrest when they were caught, otherwise none of the charges would have been dropped. I also visited the sheriff's office to express my gratitude for their quick response. I wanted to thank the deputies personally, but ended up speaking to the dispatch person. I also tried to meet Mike, the property manager, but I couldn't reach him. The agreement we've drawn up has a few key points. It includes a rule that if my wife or I happen to be in the same place as them, the last to arrive must leave immediately. We can only communicate through lawyers or other agreed third parties. They can keep the money they made from renting the vacation house, which is a concession I made unless it affects my taxes, in which case they're liable. We also agree to drop all other claims against each other up until now. There's more to it, but those are the main points. My wife and I will sign it later today. After that, I won't be able to discuss most of this, but I can vaguely refer to it. I think this will be my last update on this matter, but I'll respond to comments if I can. Sharing this situation and reading your thoughts has been very helpful for me. It's played a big role in helping me handle this in a healthy way. So, thank you again. Regarding some of your comments, I found it difficult not to seek revenge, but I'm glad I didn't. If they cause more trouble in the future, I might regret it, but if they stick to the agreement, it won't be an issue. The family dynamics are indeed messed up. I've only told my parents that we're trying to sort things out. They might not be happy with how things are going, but I had to do what's best for my wife and me. I suspect my sisters have given them a biased account. That's just another issue I'll have to navigate. Essentially, the agreement formalizes how things have been for the past few months. It might not be what my parents wanted, but I'm quite satisfied with it. Have your sisters previously displayed as much entitlement? Not really, not in my direction anyway. We weren't particularly close, but we weren't adversaries either. When I bought a loft when I was 25, they became resentful of me. Looking back, they didn't have a house at that time, but they had both met their future spouses. It was evident that they were upset that I had moved in before them. When I met my wife, it became worse. They took offense that she came from an affluent family, particularly because I was doing fairly well for myself at the time. They said that I was arrogant and other things. My wife and I moved in together after we were married. I sold the loft, and her condo was near to where she was completing her fellowship. Our wedding was elegant but affordable, and the sisters were very jealous. They and their husbands became very petty after that, and we stopped spending as much time with them. I was able to purchase my parents' vacation property thanks to my thrifty lifestyle, the money I made from selling my loft, and the lack of a house payment. My parents were fine with my keeping the ownership a secret, as they knew my sisters would be upset and accuse me of misusing her money. I didn't. We manage our money separately for the most part. However, it was helpful that I didn't have a mortgage. I really thought we were doing great overall until this garbage started. I didn't think they despised me, even though our daily lives were and still are so different, and I can't claim I enjoy spending more than half a day with them. I had no major problems with my brothers-in-law, but I was aware that both of my sisters had turned into somewhat entitled and spoiled people. We simply don't have much in common with them. All right, so that's just a fancy way of saying I had no idea they were all such assholes. Finally, I would want to say that my little fantasy right now is that I never hear from them again. This challenging journey comes to an end with a wave of complex emotions, a mix of relief and lingering pain. Looking back, this story isn't just about property or family conflicts. It's about reclaiming autonomy, dignity, and safeguarding the things that truly matter in life. The scars and losses are profound, but the important thing is that the protagonist chose to move forward, refusing to be imprisoned by past conflicts and suffering. Family can be the greatest source of support, but it can also be the source of the deepest pain. In this story, drawing boundaries wasn't just about protection, it was about reclaiming peace. While the fractures in these relationships may never fully heal, the choice to let go and look ahead toward a brighter future took immense courage. Life doesn't always offer clear answers or perfectly tied endings, but through this story, we learn the value of cherishing those who truly love us and standing firm in our self-worth. If this story resonated with you, or if you've faced similar situations, we'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. Thank you for sticking with us until the end of this journey. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to stay updated with more meaningful stories. Together, let's uncover more life lessons and powerful tales.